be reported to law enforcement officials and coroner. 19-4301A. Number 1. Where any death occurs which would be subject to investigation by the coroner under Section 19-43011 Idaho Code, the person who finds or has custody of the body shall promptly notify either the coroner, who shall notify the appropriate law enforcement agency, or a law enforcement officer or agency shall notify the coroner. Pending arrival of a law enforcement officer, the person finding or having custody of the body shall take reasonable precautions to preserve the body and body fluids, and the scene of the event shall not be disturbed by anyone until authorization is given by the law enforcement officer conducting the investigation. Number 2, except as otherwise provided in subsection 3 of this section, any person who fails to notify the coroner or law enforcement pursuant to subsection 1 of this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be punished by up to 1 year in the county jail or by a fine not to exceed $1,000 or by both such imprisonment and fine. Any person who, with the intent to prevent discovery of the manner of death, fails to notify or delays notification to the coroner or law enforcement pursuant to subsection 1 of this section shall be guilty of a felony and shall be punished by imprisonment in the state prison for a term not to exceed 10 years or by a fine not to exceed $50,000 or both such fine and imprisonment. So let's back it up. So here where we have, it says that pending the arrival of law enforcement, the person finding or having custody of the body. This doesn't say this person has to be law enforcement, this person has to be some sort of authority. It just says the person, okay? So that's anybody. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's anyone finding. So Dylan and Bethany, and I'll tell y'all this, I'm beginning to wonder if Bethany was even there. I think it's something to that, but that's a whole nother story. Maybe she came back in the morning, what have you, whatever it is. So either Bethany, Dylan, and or whoever was called over that found Ethan's that found Ethan and Xana in the room, right? So if Dylan or anybody else found that body, they were supposed to take the reasonable precautions. Now, of course, I don't expect them to know this Idaho code, right? But common sense tells you that if there's an emergency and whether they could see the body from the door or they tried to open the door, whatever that may be, obviously something was offbeat. So, okay. And not only that, if you think something is wrong, I think we all know. I mean, I think we've all have watched enough shows or TV or YouTube videos enough to know and have had enough life experience to know that you do not want to disrupt the crime scene, right? So that goes to taking the reasonable precautions to preserve the body and fluids and the scene of the event shall not be disturbed by anyone until authorization is given. Okay, so number 2. Except as otherwise provided by subsection 3. Okay. Number 1 of this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. So, excuse me. Any person who fails to notify the coroner or law enforcement. So in this case, Dylan did fail to notify law enforcement, especially with all the other interviews we've heard from the other students on campus and how it is that they need to contact their sororities or frats first or whomever, however that works, because a lot of those students had gotten those messages early in the morning. One gentleman said before 9:30 in the morning. Before 9 in the morning because he had to go to work. So this is hours now. This is hours later. And the sooner that the coroner can get to the scene, and then if they need to contact the appropriate medical official to come and investigate the bodies, the sooner that they get to the scene, the better. The easier it is for them to tell the time of death and that sort of thing. So, they slacked. Whoever was in that house who was aware or saw that something was wrong, they would be responsible to notify law enforcement. And they didn't. They waited until they called over their people, and whoever got there made the phone call from somebody else's phone, which is suspect too. Because what happened? That person didn't have their own phone with them? Whoever popped out and came to the crib and went and inspected the room of Xana's room, they didn't have their own phone? Anyway. Okay, so any person who fails to notify the law enforcement pursuant to Section 1 of the section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be punished by up to 1 year in the county jail or by a fine not to exceed $1,000. So, was anybody in that house fined? Because we know they're not. They haven't gotten any imprisonment. So, no one got a fine for something that serious. I mean, please fill me in if you guys know that somebody did. Number 3, any person with the intent to prevent discovery of the manner of death. Now we have to wonder, were they trying to actually prevent this discovery? Was the intention here that if people were getting Snapchat messages and all of that, students were getting Snapchat messages early on that Sunday morning of November 13, 2022, that the intent of someone in that home was to prevent discovery of the manner of death? Okay. Any person who fails to notify or delays. Okay, so they didn't completely fail to notify, but they delayed the notification to law enforcement pursuant to subsection 1 of the section. And therefore, whomever was there is guilty. Shall be guilty. This doesn't say may. Shall be guilty of a felony and shall be punished by imprisonment in the state prison for a term not to exceed 10 years or a fine of $50,000. So what are y'all thoughts on this? Because, I don't know, it's pretty plain English. I guess they're going to say, oh, well, their intention was not to prevent discovery. Well, I don't understand how you explain those few hours then. To me, it looks like at the least there should have been a fine or a short time of imprisonment. I mean, that's pretty serious. But let me know what you guys think, what your thoughts are. Catch y'all on the other side.